PowerPoint. Autosclerosis and Dear students, today I would like to deal with a very important topic, that is autosclerosis. Autosclerosis is a disease characterized by predominantly conductive deafness, running in families, wherein a mature lamellar bone in the bony labyrinth is replaced by immature woven bone of greater vascularity, cellularity, and thickness. This definition, it will explain the entire pathophysiology and the clinical features. Normally, the bony labyrinth will be having the mature lamellar bone. In this particular disease, it is replaced by the immature woven bone at certain points. In fact, the word autosclerosis is a misnomer. Why? Because there is no sclerosis as such. So to be precise, we should say it is autospongiosis. To be more precise, we should say, because as autosclerosis is a misnomer, we should say it is autospongiosis. That is, this particular pathology, it has the bone as a immature bone with the greater vascularity and cellularity and thickness. We may recall the anatomy of the labyrinth. The labyrinth, that is the membranous labyrinth, is otherwise known as otic labyrinth. This otic labyrinth or membranous labyrinth, we all know there will be a cochlea, 2.5 tons, ventricle, saccule, and of course the semicircular canals. All of them put together with a endolymphatic sac. All of them put together, they are known as membranous labyrinth. Surrounding the membranous labyrinth, there is what is known as periotic labyrinth, which is full up of perilymph. The otic labyrinth or membranous labyrinth is full of endolymph. Endolymph is like intracellular fluid. Perilymph is like extracellular fluid. Now, the membranous labyrinth, the periotic labyrinth, both of them put together, they are surrounded by what is known as bony capsule, otherwise known as otic capsule. Now, this otic capsule has 3 layers. The innermost layer is endosteal layer, and the middle layer is endochondral layer, and the outermost layer is periosteal layer. Endosteal layer, endochondral layer, and periosteal layer. So out of these 3, the endochondral layer basically develops from cartilage and then it ossifies. That is why it is known as endochondral layer. or endochondral layer. Now, during this ossification, some islands of cartilage are left behind and they remain unossified. These unossified islands, they become nidus for this particular condition called autospongiosis. Let us call it as autosclerosis. The word autosclerosis has remained by convention. To be more precise, we should call it as autospongiosis. Now, what exactly happens and what is the etiological factors? First is this particular term you should remember, that is fistula antifenestrum. What does it mean? Fistula antifenestrum is the area wherein the pathological process of autosclerosis is most common. Where is this particular area situated? Just anterior to the footplate of the stapes. This is classical stapedial variety of autosclerosis. I repeat, in classical stapedial variety of autosclerosis, there is one area that's called fistula antifenestrum, which is situated just anterior to the footplate of the stapes. This area, as it is very, very common, this because of the thickening of the bone in this particular area, the stapedial autosclerosis occurs because it immobilizes the stapediovestibular joint. Why only this area, fistula antifenestrum, is such a common thing? It is said at this area there is rich anastomosis between the membranous labyrinth, vascular anastomosis, and the bony labyrinth. So, maximum pathology, maximum in most common cases, most commonly we see pathology here. Now, as I told you, it is a heredofamilial disease. It is an autosomal dominant disease. That means it's enough if one parent is involved with the disease may be passed on to the offspring. And it is common in white individuals than blacks in US, and it is common in Indians, but it's not at all common in Chinese. The sex ratio is females are twice more involved than males. Generally, the disease manifests between 20 to 30 years of age. Certain hormonal factors do play a role because this disease gets worsened, especially in women during the type of menarche, that means at the time of puberty, and during childbirths, and during miscarriages, and during menopause. In good olden days, people used to have many children. With each childbirth, the situation used to get worsened. Thank God, now everybody has either one or two children. Now, apart from these, certain viral infections are also suspected, like measles. Probably this cartilaginous cell rash and the areas like fistula antifenestrum, probably with a viral infection, they get initiated. The pathological process gets initiated, like it happens in case of Paget's disease of bone. The Paget's disease of bone also, it is also maybe manifesting with hearing loss, but surgery should not be done in those cases. Now, there is what is known as osteogenesis imperfecta, that is disease of brittle bones. These individuals will have frequent falls because of the immature bone, spongy bone. And these individuals also may be associated with autosclerosis. The combination of atherosclerosis, osteogenesis imperfecta, and Bruce sclera, all the three put together, that is known as Van der Haaf syndrome. If the disease occurs in the fistula antifenestrum, that is just anterior to the foot plate classically, it will give rise to conjunctive deafness, and it is classical stapedial variety of atherosclerosis. But sometimes the disease process may be elsewhere, like in the round window region. Then it will be cochlear atherosclerosis. Generally, these two things, they uh, coexist. Very rarely, pure cochlear atherosclerosis occurs. And there is one more variety called histologic atherosclerosis. There will be only histological findings, but these individuals would never suffer. Only histologically, the pathology will be there. What does happen in atherosclerosis as far as the pathological picture is concerned? If you look at these lesions grossly, then you will be seeing only chalky white or yellow colored areas. If you examine under microscope, if the condition is active, these areas will be reddish. And in the microscope, you will find spongy bone, which is normally dense bone of the cochlea. In case of immature lesions, we will see what are known as blue mantles. What are blue mantles? It is nothing but cementing substance with many vascular spaces. I'm talking about hematoxin and eosin preparation. And the mature lesions are reddish. Why? Because there will be more fibrillar substance than cementum, and more bone will be there. How does patient come to you? Classically, patient will be coming to you with hearing loss, diminished hearing. Generally, the patients will be young females. Very, very, very typical speech they would have. They would speak in a low intensity but well modulated voice, like, I'm coming from Madhuravada, like that, in well modulated voice, very, very classical of atherosclerosis. On listening to the voice, you can suspect if the patient is a female, there is a low, well modulated voice, it must be atherosclerosis. Why do they have low, well modulated voice? Because, see, when I speak, I am speaking with certain loudness. Because I am speaking just before the computer, I'll have this much of intensity. But I speak in a class when I have to address all of you, about 150 people, I have to naturally raise my voice. Is it not? That means you have to modify it. You will modulate your voice as per the target audience. In case of these particular atherosclerotics, they speak in a well modulated voice because they are able to hear their own sound. Bone conduction is normal. In contrast to the nerve deficit individuals who shout who shout to speak to the individuals, because the other individuals, even though they are normally hearing individuals, these people have to shout so that their voice reaches them. That is what they interpret. So, apart from that, there is what is known as paracusis willisii. What is that? Paracusis willisii, it is a phenomenon by means of which the patient suffering from autosclerosis will hear better in noisy surroundings. You and me, having normal hearing, would naturally get disturbed, isn't it? When you go to a bazaar or a railway station or an airport where there is a lot of noise. But very ironically, individuals suffering from autosclerosis, they would hear better in the noises. Why? Why is it so? The explanation that is given is, since the patients, they are having uh, hearing loss confined to lower tones, the disturbances that occur as in the form of noise, they will be ignored by the patient. So they hear only speech. That is why they get this particular benefit. This is paraechosis willisii. Next, very typically, all these individuals would complain of tinnitus. Tinnitus is the feature of autosclerosis. And then occasionally these individuals may be suffering from vertigo. The vertigo may be because of associated Meniere's disease. Many years ago, one professor, Paperla from US, he has shown one slide, one histological slide. That histological slide was showing cholesteatoma in the middle ear cavity, and near the footplate region, there is an autosclerotic focus in the same individual. When you go to the inner ear, there are changes of the endolymphatic hydrops, engorgement of the atrial, saccule, semicircular canals, and so on. In the same individuals, at the statoacoustic nerve, there was acoustic neuroma. Oh, I was really surprised to see all the four diseases in the same individual. It's a wonderful sight I have seen many years ago. This is why I always keep in mind, patient might be having more than one disease. You don't know. There may be autosclerosis, plus there may be associated Meniere's disease. Sometimes, even though there is no Meniere's disease, still these patients may have occasional vertigo. Now, if you examine the patient with your ordinary ear speculum, you may find normal intact tympanic membrane. But occasionally, you will see what is known as Schwartz sign. What is that? That is flamingo pink flush over the tympanic membrane just behind the malleus hand. This is because of the excessive reddish discoloration near the footplate area. This indicates that there is very active disease, and best thing is to avoid surgery in this stage. You wait for some time so that the activity gets lessened. You can give medical therapy for some time so that the disease gets stabilized, then you can operate. And if you do Turing-4 test, what do we get? Naturally, you will have evidence of conductive deafness. That is, air conduction is better than bone conduction in the affected ear. And also, the Weber's will be latticed to be poorer ear. That is conductive deafness. But patient might be having some sensorineural element also. So patient may be having mixed deafness also. Very rarely, pure conductive deafness individuals also would be coming to us as a result of autosclerosis. So if you subject them for pure tone audiometry, what will you have in pure tone audiometry? Pure tone audiometry, you will have evidence of conductive deafness. How do we know? In conductive deafness, we will get what is known as air-bone gap. That is, bone conduction will be normal, but air conduction will be significantly reduced. That means there is a difference between air conduction and bone conduction. Apart from that, we will have what is known as Kerhat's notch. What is Kerhat's notch? Kerhat's notch is the steep fall of the capacity to hear between 2000 to 4000 hertz in the bone conduction. This is because of the inertia of the ossicles. In the case of individuals suffering from autosclerosis, in these frequencies, the inertia of the ossicles will be more. So these individuals will have more hearing loss between 2000 to 4000 in bone conduction. If you subject these individuals for impedance audiometry or emittance audiometry, you will get what is known as A-type curve, that is normal curve, or AS-type curve, short A, height will be smaller. And there will be absence of stapedial reflex. What is stapedial reflex? When you hear a lot of noise, suddenly the stapedial muscle contracts and withdraws the stapes bone from the vowel window so that the inner ear is protected from loud noises. And if you subject these individuals for speech audiometry, there will be normal speech discrimination unless there is sensory neural component. Now, what are the differential diagnoses? You have to think in terms of, are we dealing with a case of secretory otitis media? Then the picture will be very typical. The drumhead will become very dull or retracted. Sometimes you may find a fluid level, or sometimes you may find frothy transudate inside the middle ear cavity through the tympanic membrane. So, if you subject these individuals for impedance audiometry, there will be a flat curve or V curve. That means there is collection inside the middle ear cavity. And you have to consider chronic adhesive otitis media also. What will you find in chronic adhesive otitis media apart from conductive deafness? Very classically, there will be retraction of the tympanic membrane, and it will become very, very thin. And you have to consider tympanosclerosis. Tympanosclerosis also may produce same picture as autosclerosis, that is conductive deafness. But you will find tympanosclerotic flakes, whitish chalky flakes on the tympanic membrane. And sometimes there will be ossicular discontinuity, probably because of the head injury or any similar pathology, wherein you will also notice a picture like autosclerosis. But the differentiation is by means of impedance audiometry or emittance audiometry, wherein in case of ossicular discontinuity, it is AD type of curve. That means one curve like this, another curve. They don't meet together. That is AD type of curve. That differentiates autosclerosis from ossicular discontinuity. And last but not the least, the congenital stapes fixation. This occurs once in a while, especially in younger age groups. This we can differentiate only by means of a CT scan of 0.5 millimeter cuts. Only if you want to see the autosclerotic foci, you will be able to see them only at 0.5 millimeter cuts. Otherwise, you are going to miss them. Once you have diagnosed the autosclerosis and confirmed it, then what will you do? How do you proceed? First and foremost is you should give the choice to the patient, whether patient wants to use a hearing aid or patient wants to use some medication or patient wants to undergo surgery. And we should impress upon the patient the hearing aid is of wonderful value as far as the otosclerosis is concerned. The hearing aid technology is so advanced, you'll see, you will find very small hearing aids in the canal hearing aids. You will keep them inside the ear and hardly it is noticed. Patient can manage very well. Let me remind you, the former President of United States, Bill Clinton, used or uses two hearing aids in both ears. Does anybody know that? We don't. They are hardly seen. So people can manage with a hearing aid very well. And medical treatment, we give what is known as sodium fluoride, 20 milligrams per day for 1 or 2 months. But this is of doubtful significance because this particular sodium fluoride is supposed to encourage maturation of bone. That is why it is widely used. But some authors, they never prefer this particular drug. But this drug, if at all it works, it stabilizes the pathology, but it will never reverse. Patient will not regain hearing. The only thing is it will stabilize the hearing at that particular level at the most. And last but not the least, the stapedectomy or stapedotomy. So stapedectomy or stapedotomy is a life-changing operation. What is stapedectomy? Stapedectomy is removal of the stapes bone. We don't remove the entire bone. We remove only posterior third of the footplate of the stapes and along with the crura of the stapes, and replace it by means of a prosthesis, which is like a this umbrella stick appearance. By means of the prosthesis, we'll introduce the prosthesis in the place of the stapes and crimp it and replace the drum head. Because this particular procedure has some trauma to the inner ear, they have devised the other procedure called stapedotomy. What is stapedotomy? In stapedotomy, you don't remove any portion of the footplate. You make a small opening over the footplate of stapes and introduce the Teflon piston into that particular opening and crimp it as usual. So, what is the difference between stapedectomy and stapedotomy? In stapedotomy, along with the superstructure of stapes, posterior third of the footplate is removed, whereas in stapedotomy, you don't remove any footplate, any part of the footplate, but you will remove only the superstructure of stapes and make an opening on the footplate. So, this particular stapedotomy has replaced the stapedectomy, and it is comparatively it is less dangerous. Rather, it doesn't produce complications. Now, when do you do surgery and when do you refuse? Generally, if a patient is having more than 30 dB loss, then it will be symptomatic. You will be having difficulty in hearing, difficulty in taking part in conversation and so on. Especially ladies, they'll have difficulty in to communicate with their own family members, and they do complain. And the airborne gap must be minimum 50 dB. If the airborne gap is less than 50 decibel, 15 decibels, then there is no need to proceed with surgery. We can wait. And speech discrimination should be normal. Speech discrimination will be affected in case of sensory neural hearing loss. If individual is having sensory neural hearing loss, even though you do surgery, it is of not of great significance. Great advantage will not be there. In certain situations, you should never try to operate. Number one, if individual is having only one hearing ear, if something goes wrong with surgery, patient will have bilateral sensory neural hearing loss. So you should not operate when there is only hearing ear. And as I have told you before, autosclerosis sometimes may be associated with Meniere's disease. Then also you should not operate. You have to treat the Meniere's disease and see that patient is totally relieved of his vertigo and all with his anti-vertigo drugs and carbonic anhydrase inhibitors like Dimox and labyrinthine exercises. And if it stabilizes, then for hearing improvement, you can do the surgery. And then in case of children, generally in case of children, even though they suffer, we don't operate because in children, the autosclerotic focus will be very active. And even though we operate, the condition, the fixation is so much, patient may still suffer from hearing loss. Not only that, children, it is the era of upper respiratory catarrh. Patient may have repeated attacks of upper respiratory tract infections, and there may be otitis media and perforation. So, because of these reasons, generally we don't operate on children. And in case of professional athletes, suppose somebody does diving or somebody works in noisy surroundings, we don't operate. We don't like to operate because if an individual is operated and he works in a noisy surrounding like a railway station, the protective action of the stapes is not there. So the inner ear is subjected to a lot of noise, and these individuals will subsequently develop sensory neural hearing loss. In the same way, a professional athlete who takes say a high jump or a long jump or a divers, in all these individuals, the processes might get displaced and patient may be having recurrence of his hearing problem. Now, relative contraindications are pregnancy. Once the delivery is over, we can operate. In the same way, if there is otitis externa, then although for fear of infection, in case of otitis media, you never operate. You have to treat the otitis media, otitis externa with drugs, otitis media again with drugs and surgery. If there is hearing, there is perforation of the tympanic membrane, you have to correct it by means of laryngoplasty and then operate at a later date. Never we do the laryngoplasty and stapedectomy in the same sitting. Now, how do we do this operation? It is done like any other ear surgery. Patient will be in the supine position with the head turned towards the opposite side. We prefer local anesthesia for various reasons because patient will have a control and patient will notice the improvement of hearing on the table itself. And if something goes wrong and there is inner ear damage or inner ear injury, suddenly patient starts vertigo and vomiting. We can have some idea. So not only that, it is cost effective. So because of all these reasons, we prefer local anesthesia. So 2% xylocaine with adrenaline is infiltrated into the ear. Where will you infiltrate? Classically, it is infiltrated the bony cartilaginous junction in 4 points: 12 o'clock position, 6 o'clock position, 3 o'clock position, and sit at 9 o'clock position. We infiltrate and sign of blanching has to be seen. We have to wait for sufficient time so that the local acts and premedication can be given in the form of either uh, Buttram or any other either diazepam or any other thing along with phenothiazone group of drug so that the labyrinthine stimulation will become minimal. It also has atropine-like action. Separate atropine need not be given. Now, once the patient is ready, then you examine the ear, clear the debris like wax or anything, and then you have to take a permeatal incision. Permeatal incision is a U-shaped incision about 5 to 6 millimeters lateral to the annulus tympanicus. Once you incise, then you have to elevate the tympanomeatal flap carefully without making any damage to the tympanic membrane. Once you are in the middle ear cavity, you will encounter the chorda tympani nerve, which you should preserve. Why? Because it is important to carry the taste sensation. If something goes wrong with the chorda tympani nerve, patient complains of taste disturbance, especially metallic taste in his tongue on that particular site. So chorda tympani is preserved, and then you try to identify the ossicles, malleus, incus, and stapes. Try to mobilize them. Generally, malleus will be mobile, and incus also will be mobile, and the stapes will be fixed. It is immobile. Now, try to identify the entire foot plate. How will you identify the entire foot plate? By curating the posterior superior bony meatal wall. You take a curette and gently curette out the bone, posterior superior meatal wall. Then you will identify the entire foot plate, which will be seen as a bluish foot plate if you are not dealing with a case of advanced case. The foot plate will be bluish, and the focus you will not see. It is stapedial autosclerosis. In case of biscuit type of foot plate, the entire foot plate will be thickened. In case of obliterative autosclerosis, the entire foot plate will be obliterated. You will face a lot of difficulty in operating a biscuit foot plate and obliterative foot plate. Now, once you identify the foot plate, then you have to take a perforator and very gently you have to make a perforation on the foot plate. The perforation should be 0.8 millimeters wide. Now, a Teflon piston is taken and it is introduced into the perforation and also over the long process of the incus and crimped. The tympanic membrane flap, tympanomeatal flap is replaced and ear packed with medicated gel form. So this is the surgical procedure and it is not without complications. You may produce tears of the tympanic membrane which should be addressed on the table itself. You have to take a fascia, temporalis fascia and introduce underneath it. You may produce displacement of incus, which is a very serious problem. If incus is displaced, the purpose of the surgery is defeated and you have to stop there and address at the later date, or you have to extract the incus out and do a malleostepidotomy, which is more difficult and it needs a lot of more skill. And if there may be injury to the chorda tympani nerve, which is also not a simple problem. If there is injury to the chorda tympani nerve, patient goes on troubling the surgeon. Only thing is we can reassure them. And there may be complication of what is known as perilymph gusher. Perilymph gusher is a very severe complication. The moment you open the foot plate, there will be gushing of the CSF. This is because of large ventricular aqueduct which is occasionally there as a congenital defect. Now, perilymph gushers, they are very, very difficult to manage, though not impossible. You have to apply a perichondrium over it. You can proceed with the application of the piston. And then you may produce what is known as a floating foot plate. What is floating foot plate? Suppose you operate the individual at a very early stage of the disease. Then with your maneuvers of making an opening itself, the foot plate may go down. Then it is very difficult to address or retract. Best thing is stop there, replace the foot plate, explain to the patient, and reopen them after some time, because the foot plate gets stabilized at the new place, and you can very safely address the individual at a later date. Second thing is, you can make a small opening very close to the promontory, take a small hook and try to fish it out. Then, this is how a floating foot plate is managed. Sometimes these patients may have what is known as perilymph fistula. That is a late complication. Patient continues to have recurrent attacks of vertigo because the perilymph starts leaking. In these situations, you have to reopen the case and identify the leak and pack it with a fat or a fascia or a perichondrium and so on. And sometimes patient may have severe vertigo. It is treated with anti-vertiginous drugs like Senergine or beta-histidine. Sometimes steroids also we give, and if there is vomiting, we give domperidone, and we will control them. Generally, they do well. Very, very rarely, this is a very unfortunate complication. 1% of the years, they may go in for a dead year. So we should take all care, all precautions. Immediately after opening the foot plate stapes, you have to give dexamethasone, which is having some protection for the inner ear. By and large, this surgery is a very, very gratifying procedure, provided you do it with extreme care and caution. Thank you. Hello? మాట్లాడుతున్నానండి. లక్ష్మి గారు, అదే నిన్న ఫోన్ చేస్తాను చూశాను. అంటే లేదు ఇంకా మనకి సిచ్యువేషన్ బాగాలేదు కదా అని చెప్పి క్లినిక్ ఇంకా స్టార్ట్ చేయలేదండి. తీసుకోవచ్చు. చెప్పండి, ఏంటి ప్రాబ్లం మీకు? ఓకే.